Hi, everyone. Peace and greetings. This is Laren ALTA, a Black Girl Mystic. I hope that you are well and having a beautiful day. I am coming on live to talk about why I stopped following white manifestation, law of attraction, basically white spiritual teachers in general. A little bit about me. I am the mystic medicine woman, creatrix of Black Girl Mystic. And I have been doing spiritual work as a practitioner, as a student for over 20 years. I've done spiritual circles, all kinds of things. And I realized over the last few years, I've been incredibly intentional, and this is my dog, Honey, in the background taking a nap. Hopefully, she stays asleep. I have been incredibly diligent and intentional over the last several years, maybe 2 years, I would say, since the summer of 2020, when kind of the United States had a new racial reckoning and uprising in the light of Taylor's murders and George Floyd's murders. And I shut down my business. I decided to recalibrate who I was talking to, what I was talking about. I started the Black Girl Mystic podcast. And now recently in June 2022, I have launched the Black Girl Mystic universe, basically. And we have masterclasses and I do one-on-one mentorship and all that. And the work of Black Girl Mystic is really about centering Black women, femmes, non-binary folk in our own empowerment around creating lives of wealth, ease, and freedom from soul alignment. So that has been like the new vision of Black Girl Mystic, the re-envisioned vision. And part of that has been no longer, I won't say that I was centering, but no longer even referencing white teachers, famous and non-famous, in my spiritual journey. And I'm here to talk about why. So first things first, I Papa get all the honeys. But besides that, first things first, this was important because if I'm centering and uplifting my experience as a Black person, as a Black woman, as a Black person who's the descendant of enslaved and free Africans on American soil, it's important to me that the lineage through which I speak, that the people are coming from my similar life experience, that my spiritual teachers, not all of them, right? Because the reality is the things that I teach and talk about, the things that the white teachers teach and talk about, the ones that I feel resonant with, these are all universal truths, right? They don't have a corner on the market. I don't have a corner on the market. Deepak Chopra doesn't have a corner on the market, right? Spirituality, law of attraction, manifestation, energy are not racialized. These are all universal truths. They're true no matter what race you are, no matter where you live in the world. They're true because they're true universally, meaning they're true for everyone. And they're true throughout the universe, right? Like they're true. They are just the universal laws. The law of attraction is a universal law. It's a law of the land. The law of allowing is a universal law. It's the law of the land. All of these things are true, right? But why did I stop following white teachers? Let's dig into it. First and foremost, I grew up in the Christian church. I grew up in the AME Church, which, if you're not familiar, is African Methodist Episcopalian, started by Paul Allen when they would not allow him to worship in the Episcopal Church where he was a member. And he said, okay, bunk that. I'm starting my own denomination. So he started the AME Church. So the people that were uplifted in my church, my spiritual and religious leadership has always been Black people, right? Like my ministers have always been Black. The people that we talk to have always been Black. Like all of my world of spirituality has always been Black. But in the larger context of Christianity, of spirituality, there is this elevation and upliftment of whiteness, right? Of white people, of saying that Jesus is white, all of these shenanigans, stunts, and shows. Now, I'm not going down that rabbit hole today. That's not what this is about. But point one is that whiteness has been uplifted. Historically, white men have been elevated as teachers of spirituality, as the beacons of knowledge, as the ones who know and bestow, right? And we know that there is so much contradiction in the teachings of what Jesus the Christ taught, in what the church generally teaches, and the hypocrisy, right? I have been to the slave dungeons in Cape Coast, Ghana, where there was the slave dungeon underground and then a church on top of the slave dungeon, right? Of this place where the captors had capted, capted, you know what I'm saying, made people captives and put them in a dungeon underground and then built a church on top where they would praise and worship. That's incongruent, right? So we know that white folk don't have the market cornered on spirituality, on God, on Jesus, on none of that. So it's kind of putting that in its rightful place. The other reason why I've stopped following white teachers, because they're not all white teachers, especially around law of attraction and manifestation, or kind of like non-specifically religious beliefs and philosophies, have that approach, right? But there is still this sense of elevation. And if we're not talking about the benefits of whiteness in a white supremacist society, but we're talking about the law of attraction, and we're talking about manifestation, and we're talking about alignment, and we're talking about how things just manifest seemingly magically or seemingly out of nowhere, and we're not naming how people with racialized privilege are becoming, it's easier for folks who are used to the world kind of bending to them because of systems and structures that are put into place. If they aren't naming that, if Gabby Bernstein is not naming that in her teachings, it's a little less credible for me. It's a little less believable, because your version of getting it out of the gutter, out the mud, isn't the same as someone who lives a more racialized existence, regardless of their class background, right? And so I'm like, if we're not able to have more nuanced conversations around race, around race and spirituality, around race and God, around race and money, from the spiritual lens and the spiritual perspective, I'm not into it, because it's only telling part of the story, and it's not a part of the story that necessarily resonates with me, right? And truth be told, I didn't come from the hood, right? Like I didn't get it out the gutter either, right? But I have always been aware of Blackness and aware of what race means in a society that prioritizes white people and prioritizes whiteness. And so that's a different and nuanced conversation. Again, it doesn't negate the universal laws. That's why they're universal, right? It doesn't disrupt the universal laws. It doesn't even overpower the universal laws. Capitalism and white supremacy and imperialism, they can't override the law of attraction. They can't override manifestation as a spiritual principle, right? They can't override God. They can't override divinity. They can't override soul alignment. That's not how it works. Those are man-made structures and institutions. They can't override the source beyond source and all that is and all that ever will be and all that all that was, is, and ever will be. That's not how it works. But if we're not naming that people move through the world that in a different way, that the world experiences and responds to people in a different way, if we aren't naming that and are just saying everybody has the same experience in the world, then we're missing part of the conversation. Not to say there isn't a larger context and conversation, because of course there is, right? The larger conversation is that everything is available. Abundance is the law of the land. Wealth is our birthright. Abundance is our inheritance. Everything we want is available to us and on our way. That's all true. And if we've been living in a racialized society that creates a hierarchy around race, and the teachers who are naming this aren't acknowledging that different people come to the conversation from a different place and have been impacted differently because they have been racialized in a white supremacist society, right? Like there's nothing wrong with being racialized it's fantastic, right? Like I love being a Black person who's a descendant of enslaved and free Black people. I love being of African descent, right? Like that's delightful and amazing and like the best gift of this lifetime, right? So it's not that it's negative, it's that we live in a society that prioritizes whiteness. And so that's the other reason. As the third reason why I've stopped paying attention to white law of attraction and spirituality and manifestation teachers is because we got some wise and bomb Black folk out here teaching things that are ancestrally informed, that are culturally appropriate, still talking about mysticism and spirituality and healing and energy and soul alignment. All the work that I do and other Black mystics do and other Black light workers and healers and shadow workers that we do, right? We're not alone in this. We can tell our own story and create more nuanced conversations that are appropriate for our own life experience. Again, it's not saying we on the struggle bus or we can't do this or life is so hard if you're Black. None of that. That's lies from the pit of hell, right? Like none of that is true. But we can create more nuanced conversations, resourcing our abundance and our wealth and our riches and our prosperity, that the structures and the systems and the conversations even in this white supremacist society aren't naming, right? We can say maybe my great grandparents or great great grandparents didn't have any money, but they knew the abundance of the land and of nature and of animals and working with their hands in the land. That's a very specific experience. That's very different than if you were sitting in the parlor sipping tea and telling people what to do because you quote unquote own them, right? That's a different relationship to abundance and manifestation. If you could own someone and tell them what to do, than if your hands are working in the land and you can see the abundance right in front of you, blooming and blossoming and growing. It's a different conversation. And so there are so many amazing and emerging Black leaders and teachers of spirituality who may not have the Hay House book deal, who may not be on Simon and Schuster's book deal, who may not be on New York Times bestsellers, right, yet. But we out here and we are doing the work and bringing the medicine and bringing the magic and light, enlightening the miracles that we are. It's who we are. It's who we be. It's what we do. And so when we bring that more nuanced, more personal, more spiritual, more sacred conversation to the table, we're unstoppable. So that's the other third reason. And the fourth reason that I've stopped really paying attention to white spiritual teachers and all that is because I am my own beacon of spiritual attunement and spiritual alignment. I actually don't need a middle person. I don't need a conduit. I don't need a go-between. They say that gospel song, Jesus is on the main line, tell him what you want. Me and Source are on the main line. You know what I'm saying? We just in an intimate, personal, everyday, all day conversation. I don't need another person to translate or interpret for me. We hear. And so that's what really matters, is that I am attuned to and in alignment with my own soul, my own inner being, my own inner wisdom, which helps me be that, because that's really all that matters. That's all that matters, is that I'm hearing the voice of God in, through, and as me. That's what mysticism really is about, right? Is that it's not, I don't need another person to get into God. Me and God are like this, closer than my breath. And so are you and God, right? Like you and the Creator, by whatever name you use. And so that's the most important reason, is that I don't need that. Now, when I first started being really intentional 20, 30 years ago about my spiritual journey, I loved Shakti Gawain, Living in the Light, was an amazing book. I read that when I was trekking the Himalayas in Nepal, right? It blew my mind open. Deepak Chopra's 7 Spiritual Laws of Success blew my mind open in 20 years ago, right? And I know he's not a white person, but these were like the two main spiritual teachers that really opened me up, right? And then I started listening to and paying attention to other teachers, but I didn't go too far down the rabbit hole, because the testimony, I think, of an excellent spiritual teacher is that they will bring you back to you, to your source, to your truth, to your inner wisdom, to your inner knowing, because we all have it. No one has it more than another. And so when you find that one to wake you up, then you have to remember that you carry the medicine yourself. They are not your savior. They are not your higher being. They are not your power, despite what the hallucination and the hypnotism of white supremacy might be trying to convince us of. Gabby Bernstein don't know more than you. Wayne Dyer does not know more than you, right? It's really about attuning to, aligning with, and listening to your soul, your inner wisdom, your inner knowing, your inner being, and refining that listening so clearly that you hear it above and beyond all else. No one else is your higher power. You have that direct connection to it when you slow down and tune in and listen to it. That's the most important thing. That's the most important thing. But because we are so socialized in this white supremacist delusion of a culture, that we think that whiteness means knowledge, that whiteness means well informed, that whiteness means expert, right? And so we decenter ourselves with the help of this system, right? I'm not saying that we're doing it because we want to. I'm saying we decenter ourselves and we outsource our divine connection. Well, we can't actually outsource it, but the way it's set up is that the pastor knows, the preacher knows, the priest knows, the book, the New York Times bestseller knows, right? And they, like I said, they all had their place. Oh, I forgot to mention Shakti Gawain, Deepak Chopra, and Oprah. Oprah was instrumental when she did her Change Your Life television every day at 4 o'clock. When I was in college, I would race back to my dorm room to watch it and see which experts she had on and what they were talking about and what I could learn, right? So those were all important. I'm not saying just don't learn from other people. There are other people to learn from, especially because we've been so socialized to not pay attention, right? To not pay attention to our own inner wisdom, to our own inner knowing. We've been so socialized that other people know better. So sometimes we do need that jump start back into our own remembrance, because ultimately that's what it is. But once we get in tuned, then it's about having support, having guidance, having mentorship, who sees us, who knows that we're wise, who knows that we have our own medicine and magic, who trusts us and helps us to know it and embody it and live it. That's the most important part. And because if you have someone, and this is going back to the topic of today's conversation, right? If there's a white teacher out there who doesn't recognize race, or I don't see race, or doesn't understand the importance or the significance, I'll say it that way, the significance of having a racialized experience, then it really just turns into gaslighting, right? When it just really turns into like, oh, it just turns into not paying attention to the impact that being a racialized person in a white supremacist society can have on you, right? Especially in terms of your own divinity, your own spiritual journey, your own spiritual relationship with your higher self, with God, with the creator, with the most high, by whatever name you use. So this is important to remember. You can hire whoever you want. Are they bringing you back to yourself and to your source? And if you've lived in a white supremacist society that has all kinds of psychological, emotional, spiritual roadblocks between helping you remember who you truly are, then you need a guide, a teacher, a mentor to help you remember, to who recognizes you, who sees you, who acknowledges who you truly are beyond race, beyond gender, but not not completely separate from it, right? This is what's important. So if you are ever interested in mentorship or working with someone privately one-on-one, I do offer mentorship. You can go to Laren Alta. I'm not Laren Alta. That's my old website. You can go to blackgirlmystic.com/mentorship and you get all the information about working with me one-on-one. blackgirlmystic.com/mentorship. And because the truth is, we all are divine. We all have connections to source. We all are the source and expression. That's true. And it's our job and our responsibility to return to that alignment, mind, body, soul, so that we just live as the expression of source and know who we are, not irrespective of race, but realizing that that's all part of our divine expression. Yes. All right, my love, thank you for being here. I am so glad this is the first time I just spontaneously went live. I think I'm going to be doing it more often. So I look forward to being back in this next time. Have a beautiful day. Bye.